Welcome to Wealthy Living Podcast. I'm Lisa, your host and founder of Wealthy Living. It is here that I connect with a variety of wonderful humans to have inspiring and insightful conversations to help you live a meaningful, connected and well life. A place to learn and grow in confidence and clarity, to make choices that support your well-being both personally and professionally. So today I have a special guest with me, Dean Lloyd, and he's going to share some of his story with you, which is extremely interesting and varied, and something a little bit different than I have done before. But the strong message that really comes through from this story is one of hope and possibility for everyone. So welcome, Dean.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So a little bit about Dean. Dean grew up as an athletic middle-class white boy who got himself mixed up into drugs. He married a woman he met in rehab. He proposed to her in the back of an escort van after being sentenced to 4 years in prison for armed robbery. He gets out, married, had a kid, and that is the catalyst for life-changing moments. Gets his life back on track, builds a property portfolio, then he remarries, he gets 2 more kids, and then he loses it all again. Now he's on his way back up with 2 fantastic businesses. One is Lloyd Criminal Consulting. The other one is Encapsulator, and we will discuss some of those in a bit more detail as the conversation goes. So, wow. So, that in itself, just reading your bio or, a little bit about you is like, whoa, that's not the sort of person that you meet every day. Your story is quite unique. And I'm sure that we can learn a lot of valuable lessons from it. So maybe if you can share a little bit about how you went from this athletic middle-class white boy that got mixed up into drugs that ended up in prison.
It's always interesting to hear that sort of read back to me, I suppose, Lisa. I think I was around 16-ish.
Yep.
And I had been, playing rugby league up in Sydney, and at representative level, let's say, and I snapped my cruciate ligament, and that was. And I don't like to pin it on that as such, but that led me to have enough time to do other things. At that stage, I was really focused, and it was probably before the professional era. I was just on the edge of the professional era, let's say, and I was a good surfer, good at soccer. What's the other one? The surf, lifesaving, stuff like that. So yeah, anything that I was sporting, I was good at. I was terrible at school, and I was really mainly because I was interested in nothing at school, like education. That didn't really interest me. I snapped my cruciate ligament, and that was all paid for by the club. So I spent at that stage, I think it was like a 12-month rehab process to come back, and I got the operation, and then 6 weeks after the operation, I just pretty much played ping pong and smoked pot with another buddy that was meant to be doing rehab as well, and that opened my eyes to a different world, a different universe, and started to explore more sort of other pathways and other ways, and started to alcohol, like I'm a terrible, terrible drunk. 2 beers and I'm under the table in a pool of my own vomit. So that was part of the reason why, okay, I can take this and still, have some sort of social lubricant, let's say, to get over those young boy, to be able to talk confidently to girls at that stage and all that sort of stuff. And, slowly started to take a lot of LSD, and then that was around, I didn't go back and play the league ever again. That was it. It was over. And I eventually got so it was a heroin epidemic in Cabramatta at that stage, up in Sydney, and I don't know why I was driven. I can't looking back. I can't understand why I was driven to do it. I'll never forget the first time I had it, and that was quite an intense story. And I won't really go into it because it can be quite triggering for other people. But yeah, I was at Sydney Punk's headquarters, and I wasn't a Sydney Punk. I was a white boy from the suburbs, and that was the only place we could score. And I remember having it in a room full of about 50 people on a Monday night, just a random Monday night, and getting home and my girlfriend saying to me, "Where have you been?" I was like, "Oh, I've been shooting heroin in Newtown." And she goes, "Where's mine?" And yeah, it was pretty much on from there. And that once that takes hold, it's very hard to let its claws escape. And at that stage, I was working. She was, my girlfriend at the time was working. We didn't really have any understanding of the consequences or the impacts it would have on my life. Anyway, I wasn't aware of what would happen. In the end, we done a geographical to Europe because I thought if we move, and so we went to Oktoberfest in Munich, and I thought, if we go somewhere where we can't speak the language, we won't be able to buy any drugs. We landed in Frankfurt, and within I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning, within half an hour. I don't know if anyone's been to Frankfurt, but it's hectic. Or it was when I was there, and we were smoking crack in a phone box within half an hour of landing in Frankfurt.
Oh my God.
On our way to celebrate beer for a month in Munich. So yeah, that's the beginning of the end, let's say. And I remember still could hear the voice as I was in that room in Newtown with a raft of different people going, "It's all over now, mate."
Wow.
And it rings in my ears. And at the time, I had no idea or concept. I wasn't even aware it was being said to me. But, hindsight being such a wonderful thing, it still rings in my ears today.
Wow. I mean, and there's so much more to that story to
Yes.
add to how you ended up in prison. But if I just recap some of those things and sort of unpack them a little bit. So, you're someone who sounds like you came from a family which valued achievement, or in your sporting areas really encouraged that, gave you opportunity to explore that avenue. You explored that avenue, and just due to an injury, you made different choices.
Yeah, it was like a closing doors, really. It could have so easily been, a lot of the other guys. So the team that I was with went through the next season they went through undefeated.
Yeah.
For the whole season, that's unheard of in that level. And won the grand, that. So, yeah, really a sliding doors moment. It could have just easily gone the other way, and I could be whoever.
And in hindsight, when you look back on that, I mean, we all come to different stages in our life where we can make choices. Now, we're not always conscious and self-aware enough and mature enough or emotionally intelligent enough to make choices that are considering consequences.
Oh.
But we all do present at a time where we can choose a certain direction over another. And in your adult, more mature, after going through a long journey of things, mind, when you look back on that, do you think now that you even felt like there was another choice?
No. I wouldn't have made another choice. The main thing I regret is the incident that got me to prison. I wouldn't really want to visit that on anybody. So if I could take back that, I would. And up until I lost the property portfolio, I wouldn't have changed a thing. I wouldn't have changed a thing. And that's the only, the impact that I had on the victim and the loss of the financial security for my children more than anything.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're the only two things I'd really change, because I've learned how to become comfortable at who I am, and grateful that I've had all of these experiences in my life, because it's really enriched my life.
Yeah, I mean, let's just clarify that for the listeners.
I'm jumping way ahead here.
We're not advocating drug use.
No, I don't.
Or that being a really good pathway.
No,
but for you, looking back,
not.
you feel that everything that you've done within your life has led you to being the person who you are. So you're not going to look back with regrets.
Yeah, and I don't see, I don't see that being beneficial to anyone really. And no, I definitely wouldn't advocate anyone, taking any drugs in any way, shape, form or other. Like even alcohol. If you're looking to connect and to become emotionally intelligent and all that sort of stuff, that's just going to inhibit that process.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned over the years is, true deep connection can only come through, real awareness and clarity, and what needs to happen with that, is a substance-free body, really.
Yeah.
Even to the point of sugar, so don't even get me started on that. But
yeah, I mean, and that's really interesting, and I'd like to explore that a little bit further, but I think that we'll go way off track if we do that now. But that whole concept of connection, because so much of my business is around, and the belief is around connection being medicine, and and there is so much research coming out around connection being the real cure, I suppose, for addiction. And that so much of addiction comes from people feeling disconnected. Yeah. So yet the only way to really connect with someone is in a sober state, yet they're
in reality.
Yeah, so in this cycle, it's kind of really hard to, where do you stop one to start another, to like what comes first and all those all
totally.
that stuff.
And I think one thing that I really appreciated just meeting you in reality, and when I say that in reality, I honestly believe that reality only exists in the moment.
Yeah.
Everything else I do is an illusion, or create in my mind is an illusion.
Yeah.
And coming in and meeting you in person for the first time, like no phones, like I didn't get we're not interrupted by the phones, where most people, if we were comfortable enough,
yes,
we would have just been lost in our phones, I would say.
Yeah.
Like if we were a bit more familiar, there probably would have been a little, and you had to answer a message from someone, which I understand is necessary. Yeah. However, you were apologetic. Oh, look, sorry, I just need to do this. So that fosters connection.
Yeah.
Like I don't, presence in the moment of just acknowledging that I'm going outside of where we are.
Yes.
To answer something, but I want to come back.
Yes.
Over and above, society and the generation that I see at the moment coming through is the disconnection in the illusion through connection.
Yes.
So there's this illusion that I'm participating in your life in some sort of social media platform.
Yes, more connected than ever, yet more disconnected than ever.
Yeah. What I realised was that I haven't seen my best mate for 6 months, and I'm lying on my lounge. I'm not connected to anybody.
That's right.
So that illusion that social media creates, I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah.
Because I can't see it. People I've read papers on it being evolutionary, and it's going to be sexy when people have big stumpy thumbs because they're typing so much and hunch on their back. That's people have written about the evolutionary process of that. However, I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we can become a well-adjusted society and community.
Yeah.
Through connecting that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously time will tell where it plays out and how, that's like, that whole nother topic area of like the modern world of technology and how to use it for our benefit as opposed to using it like your technology or encapsulator that we'll talk about soon. But, as opposed to using it for just connection and taking away from the fact that we're social beings and isolation and all of those sort of things that are
totally
not good for our well-being. But I really want to get back to your story. Now, that was a little bit of a side. Back on track.
We'll get off track a bit.
Yeah, we will. But, your story's really interesting. So you got into the drugs, so much so that you started with the dope that led to a little bit of drinking that then led to heroin, and then that was the beginning of the end for a while.
Yeah, and then... So I think I was around 23-ish, and I bounced in and out of. I reckon I had probably 20 admissions to rehab, and then finally landed in one down in Wollongong, and. Yeah, and that's where I met the mother of my eldest child. She come in, and I don't think anyone there actually said, like, everybody warned me off her. Every single person that was there, like, so her reputation preceded her, and she was an older woman. And there was I don't know, I can't label it, whatever it is. There was an attraction, there was an intensity in the chemistry between us. It was lust, probably.
Yep.
And then pretty much broke every rule with her. Proceeded to, rob the house that we were living in when they were all down the shops, and left with all the money, the stuff that we went and used drugs with the money, and having had a brief interlude of a clean life and a sober life. It was about 8 or 9 months in total at that stage, I think. Then went back to using on a daily basis, and I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. However, the using and what I was introduced to as a result of meeting this person, it was a whole level of, at one stage you probably would have referred to me as a toaster hocker, which is someone that would have just gone down and hocked the toaster and got some drugs and then gone back and bought the toaster and then hocked the toaster again. That was a common phrase. However,
this is like a whole education.
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. Well, this will lead into.
This is what happens in the back streets of the cities that you're living in.
Yes, it is. And then this led to a whole different level of crime, of earning ill-gotten gains. So it introduced me to a whole underbelly of whatever it was, and I was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and so how I got to that space was I was on a methadone program, and so went on the methadone program. Okay, backpedal one. We'd just done an earn, and we got a significant amount of money, and were using a significant amount of heroin.
For those who don't know, because I learned this,
I
learned this just before when we were having just a conversation before we went on air. An earn is when you rob somebody of money, or gain financially, similar to going to work and earning money. In a very non-ethical way.
It's a slang terminology, and sorry, I need to remember who your audience is.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is fine.
That's my job, that's all right.
We were involved in something that I don't talk about really because I got away with it. Anyway, this is 20 years ago. It was probably almost $80,000. So where were you? When you're in that lifestyle, there is no tomorrow. So you're, hotels, and it's champagne and caviar, and then the next day it's like cheese and crackers. Like it comes really quickly and goes really quickly. Then because of the habit that we had to get on the methadone program because it was just unsustainable, really. got on the methadone program and just couldn't even afford to buy. So they'll give you a certain amount of days for free, and then you have to pay. So with the methadone program, and then so it was Boxing Day, and we needed the money to pay. Like I couldn't get any more methadone from the clinic, and so Boxing Day, 1999. Nothing was open in those days, so nothing, like no Boxing Day sales. Driving back to Wollongong, and the only thing that was open was a little corner store. So I pulled up in the car that I owned and was registered in out the front. This is the desperation. Like this, when you hear it, you'll understand the desperation. And just, picked up a weapon off the back floor and ran in and demanded the money. And, it didn't end well. And was caught and subsequently in the end sentenced to 4 years of prison, a term that I done 2, and my partner at the time, she was sentenced to 2 years of prison and done 1 year. And on sentencing, on the way back to the prison, decided to propose. We're going to have a jail wedding, like the whole...
Oh, my God.
Yay! Just insane. Like when I hear it now, it's like, oh my God, I was insane. And I was, That's one thing that's often said and you'll hear is, when you're talking or dealing with somebody that's in active addiction, you're dealing with somebody that's insane. Like there is no rhyme or reason. You cannot bargain. There is no sort of...
And they believe everything that they're saying.
Yeah. There's a story of, what's the difference between an alcoholic and an addict? An alcoholic will steal your wallet. An addict will steal your wallet and help you look for it.
I don't get it.
So an alcoholic will steal your wallet and piss off, go to the pub.
Yeah.
An addict will steal your wallet and help you look for it. Oh, where could it be?
Oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
So just that whole
Sorry, it's Friday afternoon.
No, it's fair enough. I said it pretty quickly, but that whole thing of, I was still...
Delusional, yeah.
Delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
Just that. I was insane and doing insane things and behaving insanely. And then, so done the time. That was another, that's a whole other podcast. Let's just say that. Because we'll get way off track if I start telling those stories. One story that I'd like to tell is,
Is this a story of in prison?
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop you there because
Stop.
I do want to have that story. Before I go to that story, I want to just... Something that just kept coming over for me, and maybe it's because I'm a mum and all those things, but I'm thinking of you if you were my child and I had, given you these opportunities in life and I wasn't, didn't come from an addiction background or anything like that. Well, I don't know whether you did or you didn't, but what effects was all of this time of you, practicing, you using...
In active addiction,
what effect was that having on your family? And
that's a very valid point, so I was a golden child. Could do no wrong. So my dad, his side of the family was more, his father left when he was 12 and said, "You're the man in the house, son. You take care of business." So, and my dad's a self-made man, the analogy I like to use is the pendulum. So he had this end of the spectrum, so he gave me that end of the spectrum.
For those that you can't see Dean, he's using his hands and basically going from high on one side to low to high on the other.
Lucky you're here. Like.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
it's Friday afternoon.
Otherwise, I'll be burgling your house. No, no, I'm just joking. So from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
So the extremes I don't see as valuable.
Yeah.
But he could only give me what he wasn't given. Like he knew that I'm not going to give that to my kid.
Yes.
Which, kudos to him. and turned his life around. Whereas, I would have valued way more in the middle. But, and that, I don't know, I'm not saying that's where it come from or whatever, but whether it skipped, he was a workaholic. He was 7 days a week, real estate agent in the 80s, quite successful.
Absence.
Yeah. And I don't...
Which was kind of normal in the
80s. I don't think that was wow, he's just never home.
Yeah, that was normal of a lot of dads.
He was out working hard and earning money and providing for us. I didn't really want for anything as a kid.
And when you think about it, probably part of your entrepreneurial spirit in some of the things that you've done with your property portfolio with these 2 businesses now might actually have come from the role modelling of a father who was making something of his life financially.
Yeah, and I think I sent him a message because he had a scare with illness a while ago anyway. We don't, there's, that father-son sort of relate, good on you, mate, sort of scenario. And I don't drink, so I don't go and have a beer with him or anything like that. So I sent him a message the other week just to say, look, I really want you to know that I love you and I really value everything that you've given to me. Like, I don't know whether you know that I know what you've given to me.
Oh,
just because, being in this entrepreneurial phase and just seeing him just backing up to it and, all of his... he was seen as someone that was sort of sat outside and was like a bit of a trailblazer, let's say, in what he was doing in the industry he was working in at that stage. He was like, but it was what, he was making money, he was employing 4 or 5 guys. Like, that's, that's nothing to be sneezed at, you know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
He's out there having a go. So, it's only now I can see that.
Yes.
I was a bit too close to it at one stage.
Yeah, so going back to the effect that it was having, so your dad was not present.
So he was not present. My sister, I assume she was quite jealous. She ended up packing up and going to London because she couldn't get far enough away from us in the end, you know what I mean? So it...
Your mum?
My mum is... I still can do no wrong for my mum. Like, I'm just, like I said, I'm the golden child.
So no matter what you went through, was she in denial?
Her focus was on me. So it was like...
Was she supportive or in denial or?
I think early on, yes. Early on there was a sort of like, oh no, you couldn't do, like he's the bee's knees, whereas now she's like, oh, you're a rascal. Whereas, when I was a kid, I was like, no, he was a beautiful child. He never wanted, slept well, never cried, never, all that stuff.
But when you were into the drugs and using, was she aware of what you were doing?
I think she was in denial a little bit. I think they were aware. Like, once I went to rehab, they were aware. And then, like, I didn't go to rehab and I didn't stop. So, I was out of their life pretty much. I wasn't sort of going and spending time. Like, I was, like, they were in Sydney and I was in Wollongong. So there was no closeness there.
All right, so definitely had an effect on your family. Obviously, not to the extent that sounds like you hid it a little bit or didn't do it to the they weren't aware of the extent on some parts.
That said, sleepless nights and all that. Like, like, oh, you're going to hearing sirens. Oh, is that them? Is he getting arrested?
And
she said when you got arrested and you were in prison, I could sleep because I knew where you were.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. So prison becomes security, in some
ways,
yes,
100%.
You're secure in lots of ways.
Well, it's a secure place for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I mean, it's secure in that you're not there possibly holding someone up in a shop,
that's
doing
what
crimes.
I mean. Like, I think there's a raft.
They're secure for you to stop and have contemplation. There's security that you're going to know where your next meal is going to come from, that you've got a bed. There's a lot of interesting things that can that I suppose I'm not saying it's a place people want to go, but
No.
I remember a story talking. I was in the car with my son to school. This is when he was, I don't even know how old, maybe grade 3, grade 4. And there was this news story about how a lot of people who will continuously want to stay in jail because if they don't, they'll just be homeless.
Yeah.
And it enables them to actually know where their next meal's coming from, and they've got a bed and all of those sort of things. And my son turned around and said to me, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like well, that makes the people that are homeless that we see on the street so selfless, because they would rather be homeless than commit a crime that's going to hurt someone else to put them in jail.
Yeah.
So, it was just really interesting perspective of,
Yes.
the fact that, this guy was saying he's been in jail, and there's something attractive for a lot of people to be in jail.
Still to this day, so 2001 I was released. I haven't been back, not forcibly anyway. Still to this day, I crave on the odd occasion to be locked in at 3:30.
Why?
It's so when I get overwhelmed, and it's all too much, and the kids and the whatever's going on in my life, and it's like I just so the isolation more than anything. So to be able to just get locked in and not have to be anything for anyone, and just have that
escape.
Yeah.
And
solitude.
Isn't it crazy that we're living in a world where we feel that we don't have permission to give ourselves solitude when we've got a family or we've got other responsibilities, that we haven't prioritised our own solitude within our timetable or within our schedule. And it's like, that's just crazy that we're living these lives and we're so beholden to others that we're not actually giving ourselves the solitude that we need when we need it.
Oh, totally.
It's like the guilt for having solitude.
Yeah, and so part of the struggle that I've had recently around that is, being in the start of two business or the startup phase of two businesses, like there's always work to do. There's never not, if you run your own business or you're in the entrepreneurial type, there's always. So becoming aware that I need, in order to sustain that, I need to self-care.
Yes.
And to have that space.
Boundaries.
To be able to go in order to function. And, it's always that. I always like to go back to that. Put your own life jacket on first. I can't save you if I
absolutely
can't save myself.
Yeah, you got to pour,
Yep.
Keep your own cup full so that you can pour abundantly into the other projects and people that you love.
Totally. And that's, we'll get to it, but that's where Encapsulator sits for me. That's part of how
Perfect.
Anyway,
all right, now let's go to this prison story.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I was like, what prison story? Which one? And so,
the one I cut you off from speaking.
Yes. Well, let's go. Okay. So, it was the Sergeant of Arms of the Comancheros. So, if you're not au fait with that cohort.
No, I'm not.
The Sergeant of Arms is the person, he's the enforcer. So, if there's any fighting or any business to be taken care of, he's the guy that takes care of the business. Right?
Okay.
So
wait. He's the guard or the person with the top dog of the prisoners?
No, he's just in prison.
Oh.
And in the same area as me. But
so he's a prisoner.
Yeah, as a Comanchero bikie,
he
is the Sergeant of Arms.
You can see how ignorant I am about all of this, my protected life.
So if anyone needs to be backhanded or fought or whatever, he's the guy. He'll fight anyway. So he's the toughest guy anyway. So he used to get me to read his love letters.
Yeah.
And we'd be sitting in his cell and he'd be in tears and I'd be, because he's illiterate. And he'd be like, mate, if you fucking tell anybody about this, I'm going to get you. And it wasn't like a threat, but just that surreal experience.
That vulnerability.
Of sitting on this bed. This guy's like 8'10", built like a brick shithouse, and he stood in the middle of the pod where we were and vouched for me. He said, if anyone's got a problem with this guy, they've got a problem with me. Don't fuck with him. Like, and I'm a stocky sort of dude now. I was like 65 kilos ringing weight at this stage. I was like nothing. He was like, mate, you don't belong. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You don't belong here. Just get out. Just fuck off. So, he really, I valued his friendship. We were friends. But just that surreal experience of him, like, we're sitting in there, that macho environment. He's like, if you fucking tell anybody about this, here's a box of Cobra Pops. Like, fuck off and don't leave me alone to cry and, miss my wife. And some of these letters were like, I don't want to read this. So he's like, mate, couldn't read at all. So yeah, it was. I used to have to do all sorts of. I was his assistant, admin assistant, let's say, which is another surreal experience. But yeah, that's the story that I was going to tell before.
Oh my God, I would love just sit with you for like a day, just hearing all these stories. I just find them fascinating, and I mean, you can unpack all of them, and I mean, even just today, there's so much media around men's health and the levels of suicide in men's health, and the fact that men find it so difficult to be vulnerable, and yet, listening to that story, then the rawness of that man in that particular moment was raw, was vulnerable, and was so necessary for him. And obviously he trusted you to be that person that sat with him in it.
Yeah.
But if all men could sit in that with their mates, and it wasn't such a thing that it was like you tell anyone and you're dead. You know what I mean? It was that's the shame, Totally. And if there wasn't that shame, how different men would be. And which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but big advocate for that. Suicide survivor myself. So, but that space of, having gone on in further education and counselling and all that sort of stuff, looking back, like you said, that he had enough trust and faith in me to be able to be comfortable enough to share that and be vulnerable. That I feel honoured in.
Yeah.
Like, it's that moment that I was like, not the standing in the middle of the yard going, if anyone's got a problem with him, they've got a problem with it. Looking back, it's like, wow, this guy had enough trust in me to be able to keep that. Mind you, there was a threat of violence, but it was a half pie threat of it. Like, it wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't feel in danger of my life. Put it that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. So much to talk about. Okay, so you're in prison in the end for 1 year.
2
years. 2 years out of the 4 years sentenced. So when you were in there, was there times that you were like? Tell me a little bit about how you. Not each individual story, because we really don't have time. Although I would love to hear all the individual stories. But the whole feeling and vibe in there, like the criminal justice system, like, do you think they're doing a good job? Do you think that when people are in there, they're getting enough time to have reflective practices? Is there good support? Is there stuff to really help with their rehabilitation to come out and be different? Or is it just all on the onus of the individual's responsibility to do that for themselves?
So when I was back in the time that I was in, there was opportunity to do programs and address offending behaviour. However, I pretty much smoked pot every day, and when I was able to get a classification to exit and enter the prison, like just on the yards and grounds, I was doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, and that allowed me to, have drugs every day and all that sort of stuff. So there's drugs everywhere in prison. It's easy to get drugs in prison, or possibly even easier than on the street. That's a whole other story, and I'm not going to go into any accusations or anything around that. However, at the point in time now, and I don't know too much about Victorian prisons, but I can't see them sitting, like, I've just been at a conference. So there is no rehabilitative programs or educational programs in any New South Wales prisons at this point in time, as attested to by Anne-Marie Martin, the head of services and programs in the Senate estimate committee. Like, she admitted it on several different occasions. No, there's no programs for people to address their offending behaviours adequately. So there's programs, but they don't work. So New South Wales prisons are run by corrective services industry. So that essentially, if I got arrested, they would take me in. They would go, okay. So there's an illusion they're doing a holistic approach to it at the moment. So what they do is they work out what skills you have, what you're capable of, then they go, okay, well, when you get sentenced, you'll be able to go up to this prison because there's that industry there, right? So and then we're giving them skills and this, that, and the other. But when people transition back into the community, there's no industry for those skills, because where in the community, even in China, can you get somebody work $2.65 an hour? So that industry, and to compete in that industry for tenders and all that sort of stuff, you've got to have labour that only costs $2.65 an hour.
Oh my God.
So, and they do a lot of stuff. So in relation to building prison, the uniforms in prison, this is probably another tale that I like to tell. So, and I don't know if they still do it, but all of the Qantas first class stuff used to be done by pedophiles.
Wow.
So yeah, I always used to like to imagine all the first class people up there in the pajamas and the headphones.
With the energy of a pedophile.
Well, yeah.
But as we talked about on off air, there's, people are people. They've just got different stories and different experiences and different circumstances that have led them to different things. But, it's so easy to label people.
Yeah, and I'd say...
according to their actions. And I'm sure that I do it. And obviously when you think of something like pedophilia, it's easier to label it as that being what defines that person in totality.
Yeah.
But we all know, if we really sat back and really reflected and you really had a personal conversation with that person, it's not that person in totality, it's just a part of them.
Yeah, I'm not really going to comment much more on that, mainly because I've worked with that cohort.
Yeah, maybe not that cohort, might be a bit different, I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
And like I said, I don't really want to...
Yeah.
It's not an avenue. However, that said, all the evidence suggests that when released, they need to be So if they're out, the light is shining on them, give them a job, okay, we can see you, we can see what's going on, include them, very rarely reoffend.
Yeah.
Put them, you sick...
So then it comes down to purpose and connection.
You sick pervert, get out the back, we don't want to know about you. It's when the reoffending occurs. So,
that's that isolation, not belonging, not have no purpose, all the reasons that probably, in a way, might have led them to some of those.
But that's there's a whole other raft of things that's like not really what I want to talk about, and not an area I'm experienced in any way, shape or form.
No,
so
neither.
I don't really want to comment much more on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, even looking at the recent film with the Joker and looking at mental illness and have you seen it?
I haven't seen that one yet, but
so good.
I've
but,
heard
really looking, and psychiatrists have really written a lot about how the system is letting them down, and the mental health. I
have another opinion on that.
Yeah, well, that's
Psychiatry
interesting.
and Big Pharma
are
driving it.
Yeah.
I don't... I think psychiatrists are going to go the way of the dodo bird in the end, and they're really, from what I've seen and what I'm learning, they're really trying to hold on to all of the information that appears to be quite antiquated at the moment, and the models and the modality of come and see me and I'll fix you with medication.
Mm. Oh, no.
And I'm not saying, hey, that's not... medication, I'm not advocating no medication, so don't jump off your meds, guys. So there's a place and purpose for it, and I know that it improves people's lives significantly, so I'm not advocating for that. However, I feel like we're down that path now, and it's a bit hard to come back and
absolutely
from what we knew, or what before I was born, what was known, but back then, it's what we know now about the brain and gut health and eating healthy and all of that sort of stuff.
And I've done a little bit of
the whole Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of podcasts on some of that stuff before, and the effect of our gut health on the brain and stuff like that. And wow, so
Yeah,
there is
sorry.
that's a whole nother
yes.
another path. But yeah, so coming out and re-entering community, how was that?
Difficult, significantly difficult. So, entering prison, it is a dehumanising process and a stripping of all functionality. So you cook my dinner, you bring my clothes, like everything's done. I don't need to go to the shops. The doctor's there if I need medication.
Sounds like a holiday.
Well, some might say it is a bit of a holiday. However, so all functionality is slowly eroded. So after 2 years, and I feel like I sit outside of the general sort of, and that's not because I think I'm better or anything like that, but I feel like I entered prison at a functionality higher than most people get out with, or enter prison with. So just the expectation of, okay, you come in here, we're going to take everything off you and we're going to do everything for you, and then when you get out, well, here's $50 and an Opal card and you're on your way, buddy. See you later. To function and get a job and do all that sort of stuff, like it's just, and this is where I feel like the solution sits outside of prison, because ultimately you can make it a holiday camp prison, and some prisons are, they call them camps. So comfortable, cook your own meals and all that sort of stuff, which is where a space in where I got out from in the Bay, there was a program like that. However, if you send me back into the same environment that I offended in, like what's the purpose of doing all this great work over here if you don't fix this over here? If you don't, sorry, I'm using my hands again. So if you put me in prison and you improve my life significantly and my ability to function and cope, but you send me back home and my wife's prostituting, or my mum is doing whatever, and my dad's selling dope, like what chance have I got?
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's a community problem that requires a community solution.
Yes.
Inclusion, connection, participation.
Absolutely.
Increased.
So if for example, someone like yourself or any criminal is going to jail,
yep,
instead of them just working in isolation on the criminal, they've got to look back and think about, reassess or assess, actually, not even reassess, but assess their environment and their family and all of the exterior, and have programs that help those people as well, because if they're going to stay at a level that maybe just one off entering prison, then like you said, if you come back to that environment and the environment's still the same.
Yeah, and this is, backtracking a bit, but this is where I was talking about the medication. So it's a product of the environment. So, my addiction was whatever was coming through my family focused into me, and I was the scapegoat sort of scenario. And, whether it's whatever it is, it's the system that's sick. It's not the individual. The individual pays the price ultimately, and then ultimately...
Well, that's kind of what the Joker's about.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So the system, creates this person, and then we decide to punish them, and then in our attempts to punish them, we punish everybody. So it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense at all, and it's not working.
Yeah.
So when we attempt to punish one, we punish many.
Yes.
So the ripple effect of the family, the kids, and long-lasting, not just while they're in prison, the impacts of an inhibitive processes once released are significant. Significant. To get into employment, it's 20 years, and I still have to, I took corrective services to the Human Rights Commission because they discriminated against me because of my criminal records. So it's, and on their website it said, the purpose of prison is to keep the community safe, yes, and to rehabilitate and reintegrate into the community to become productive members of society. Like, well, do you actually believe what's written on your website? Because I've done that, yet you still won't employ me because of the mistake I made in 1999.
And there would be other problems too, like you wouldn't be able to get credit cards and, like there'd be
There's
lots
all
of
sorts
things
of,
that when you've got a criminal record you can't actually get.
Yeah. There's so any time that you've served that's over 6 months will never go away. It will always be on your record. So, to declare that, so I can't go to the States. My family want to go to Hawaii. I can't go to Hawaii. My wife's got a sister that lives in New York. They've got property in upstate New York with trout farms, and they want us to go over there and our, kids to play with their cousins. I can't go. 20 years later, I can't go. So that process of, and the ability for me to earn what I'm worth and what I see as my value is inhibited because there's a big movement around lived experience and employing people in lived experience. However, it's frontline staff. There's no, this guy sits as a manager in an organisation with lived experience to develop there's none of that. There's a lot of jobs that are coming online around lived experience frontline, and there is value. There's inherent value in employing that and leveraging that. However, a lot is in a mentor space as well, so they're not even getting paid for one. However, what I equate to people is if I had gone to university for the amount of time that I've used drugs and been in and out and around prison, I'd be a professor. I'd have a doctorate. I would be there would be a recognition. I would have had a PhD published. I would have had everything. So I've got that information, and it's valuable information, and people are starting to come.
Well, it's probably more integrated. It's lived. It becomes wisdom. It's actually integrated information.
Yeah, it is, as well as, so if, for argument's sake, if you were a dignitary or a politician and you're going into the correctional environment, and what they do is they trot out the most compliant individual possible, right? You don't get any information off him. Like, the guy that you want to speak to is the guy at the back that's running the show, that's standing over old mate up here, that they've wheeled out, taking his lollies and whatever. You want the information off the guy at the back because that's the valuable that's the reality of the situation. I get that guy at the back. I can go in and I can get access to him, and I can get access to that valuable information around what's going on, what he's disgruntled about, what the population's disgruntled about, and then there's evidence that it's been used. So there's a thing in the UK called User Voice, and they're leveraging it at the moment. They're saving so they've gone technical over there, and you can order bread and milk every day and blah blah blah. And there was guys going, "Oh, we don't want bread." So, but they get bread every day no matter what. And they were like, "Oh, okay, well, what do we want?" They wanted to get access to, I don't know what they wanted, something around visits and a drinks machine in the visits, and
some drugs.
Well, no, they had the drugs. Don't worry about that. But then they've gone, "Oh, okay, so what are you going to give them?" Well, okay, what we would suggest is put a button on so they've got an iPad in there that they order all their food and that off. Put a button on there, no bread. So they put a no bread button. $20,000 in a month they saved.
Wow.
So just that sort of,
innovation,
getting that, without people like me going in and getting that information, they're wasting $20,000 worth of bread.
Yeah, ridiculous.
So just, that's just one example of how that leverage of information, and when you see the kids rioting up at, in the juvenile justice systems. So the last one I found out, so there was a guy come in and he had molested a couple of the boys. So they broke out of where they were, got the whippersnipper, went over and given him a whippersnippering and then ended up on the roof. On the news, what do we hear? Oh, these degenerates have smashed the... Well, no. They've attacked someone that's molested them. They're kids. They don't know how to go, hey, sir, Johnny over there done something bad to me.
Yeah.
So the stories that I can get access to and understand and provide...
Well, you can also connect a lot more easily with these sort of people because
that's how I get the stories.
Yeah, exactly, because they trust you. Again, it comes down to you're not someone who they trust you. You've been there, you've done that. It's kind of different. I know that we're aware of time. You've got to catch a plane. I've got kids, so let's just move on a little bit. What do you think? I mean, you've come to a point where you've come out, you've started businesses. Yep. Obviously, some of them haven't done as well, and then you've restarted again, and you've got this resiliency and this ability to just keep going. And we touched on a little bit about the role modelling of your dad, but what do you think has helped your recovery? I mean, you just sort of shared with me about how when you come out from a system like that and then go into the community, how difficult that is to adjust, and yet I'm sure you haven't done it without, some hiccups. Yeah. But what has been the main thing that has helped you with your recovery to be in the position you are today, where you've just come today from presenting, a talk at the
International Criminal Justice Conference?
Yeah, you've got a few businesses. Like, how have you done that? Like in a snapshot?
Support. Understanding that I need support, a lot of therapy, and this is where I sit in that space of understanding my privilege and access to that. I've been afforded opportunity to go to therapy. I'm currently married to a therapist. I've studied to be a counsellor and all of that sort of stuff, the diploma in community services. But it's support and accessing support. And so after getting married for the second time and, transitioning out of a real estate into the community services sector, my wife says I had a midlife crisis. I bought a motorbike and went to Bali for 3 months with the family. And falling over. And I did. I'll cop to it now. I had a midlife crisis. And it proceeded to put a lot of that, a couple of properties into my arm in heroin addiction again. And, the way that I rationalised that this time was, I wasn't jumping through people's windows and robbing them. I was just going to the bank and getting some more money out. So just, sold a whole heap of property and used all that money. And at that stage, I think I touched on it before, or maybe when the mic was off, my wife had never believed any of the stories that I'd told her because I wasn't that person. When she first met me, I wasn't using, I hadn't used, and I was quite well and healthy in all areas and aspects of my life. I had a good support network, friends that I could talk to and become vulnerable with and, access and learn. So that was a thing. A significant moment in my life was there was a guy that was really well. I really respected him, and he was, an old school crim, and he said to me, because I was really confused about what a man was when I got out of prison. I didn't, put my fist up and have a, punch on with you. Yeah, I could do that really easily. And he said, for me, it's about facing my greatest fears. And he said, my greatest fear is telling another man how I feel. He said, if I can face that, like, that's it. That's that. He said, for me, that's a man. That's the most courageous thing I can do is face my greatest fear and tell another man how I feel. So, and that was like that was a revelation for me. It's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, we need to get intimate. And I was like, buddy, I've been to jail, but that's not me. So that's how confused I was about intimacy and males and men and all that sort of stuff, and have subsequently learnt what intimacy is. So, and I like to phrase it as into me you see. So let you see into you, like into my soul. And then further along, in that relapse of losing all the property, and what happened was the love that I was shown from my wife. Like, she just stood by me. People are going, "Oh, he's a dead shit. You need to leave him. He's like hopeless." She's like, "No, like it's just he's sick and he needs to get well." So rephrasing that and detaching with love. Look, if you want to do that, you can't do it at home. You can't do it in front of the kids. I really love you, but it's up to you. It's your choice, not sort of, you need to go to rehab, because she tried that and it didn't work. It doesn't work. So you need to go to rehab and you need to do this and you need to go back to, meetings and all that sort of stuff. What worked was, well, this is what I'm willing to put up with and this is what I'm not willing to put up with. And it's up to you whether you decide you want to stay or not. And, the only thing that I've ever seen that's stronger than a love of a parent for a child is addiction. Like, I chose drugs over kids numerous times. I'm not proud of that, but it's once it gets older, it's really hard to shake. Just her ability to stay attached and just show me moments of kindness when I was just like at my lowest, which generally in what I spoke to at the conference was, in that punitive model, when people are at their lowest, they get kicked. It's like, "Oh, I'm down and I'm terrible and I've just made some really terrible choices. Oh, yeah, sweet. Let's kick him. Let's go. Everyone, come over here and we'll give him a good kicking and we're going to send him away for 4 or 5 years." Like, it's not a solution as far as I'm concerned. So just being aware of that. And like I said, if it wasn't for my wife and being shown that love and support, because at that stage, that's when I attempted suicide. I thought, everyone's going to be better off if I'm not here. Because I couldn't stop. I had a period of, almost 10 years of just abstinence and really living well. And then around 2 or so years of just not being able to stop, really wanting to stop, but not being capable of it.
So you feel like the biggest thing for you was that connection and feeling connected. Of love.
Oh, yeah.
That unconditional love.
Yeah, I'm here, 100%.
Because of the unconditional love.
Like, you're sick. There's no moral deficiency. Some of your behaviours are terrible, absolutely atrocious. I don't agree with them. However, I love you and I'm committed.
Wow, what a
if
woman.
If you want to get well, yeah. So, yeah.
And so how long do you think it took for you to get clean after, like, how much love needed pouring in?
6 to 8 months. Yeah. It was tested. It was very, I took it to the extremes as, it has to happen.
How much do you love me?
Yeah. Do you love me $50? No, it's, yeah. She was doing a serious amount of work on herself and had a serious amount of support. That's what I mean. She had a support system and structures that were supporting her to be able to do that and behave.
Well, and that comes back to this whole idea of community, doesn't it? We can't be an island. Exactly. We can't be in isolation, and it is a solution for us all. And it does have that ripple effect, and support is needed for the helpers need support too.
Yeah, yes.
And the supporters who's helping the supporters need support, and everybody needs support, and nobody's above it.
No, and we all need to be able to talk about it openly.
Yeah.
It's not a stigma. It's not a, like I said, it's not a moral failing. This is just life. People I always say I'm like one bad decision away from prison again. Like, I don't exclude myself from that. Like, I can just make one mistake and I never know where I'll be.
Yeah. But, we can all, obviously,
anyone
with your history and with your, the fact that you've relapsed before, obviously you're at a greater risk than somebody else at making maybe that one bad mistake. But in the end, it is like that sliding door situation that we talked about right in the beginning. It is just making that decision or that choice that leads on one path as opposed to a different path, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's so I was working in a treatment facility and, triaging people as they were like, "Oh, okay, you ready? Okay, we've got a spot," and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, "Oh, well," and they're all gun-ho. Everyone's like, yeah, okay, next Tuesday, the date's set, blah, blah. And you ring them on the Friday. Yeah, oh, well, And then you ring them on the Sunday. Oh, well, and then Monday it's like, well, I've got a couple of things I need to do before tomorrow. It's like, mate, there's never a good day to go to rehab. Never a good day. And it's like, there's never a good day to do anything. Like if you take it back, it's like the only way to start is to start.
Absolutely.
And, the first step.
It's like I'll go to the gym tomorrow, but and then tomorrow's tomorrow and tomorrow's tomorrow.
Yeah,
There's no good day, which,
And that's,
it's like putting off the inevitable.
That's where Encapsulator steps in for me.
So tell me a little bit about Encapsulator.
Okay, so going back onto when I was working in that treatment facility, so the founder, Danny Shannon, he come up with this idea of, I like to say that he just wanted to buy a video camera, but he come up with this idea of tracking people's journeys as they come from prison to rehab and then out, and then giving them to a gift to them once they're gone or at some date, so in that space, people celebrate milestones like a year clean and 2 years clean and all that sort of. So around, okay, let's give it to them when they're here. So he come up with that idea and played around with it a bit, and then I went and moved on, and I've done other work, and he still works in that same space and had developed that business or developed the idea and concept over time, and to the point where he's turned it into a web platform or a web app, and then now it's a digital time capsule. So it's a vault where you record a video message to yourself on a certain date that will then be sent back to you. So it's a video promise of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And the power in holding yourself accountable is significant.
Yeah.
So we advocate for you to have a bit of a support structure and program, and there's emails and reminders that we'll send out and all that sort of stuff. However, if used properly, sitting down and staring down the barrel of the camera with just you in the room, not making content for anybody else, so you're not making a video, so that and doing that's a powerful experience.
It's almost like a personalised diary that talks back to you.
It is. It is. And then once you lock it, you can't see it until it unlocks.
And you set the date yourself.
You set the date yourself, and then you can keep uploading to it.
Yeah. And this is a great use of tech.
We like to say we introduce you to the most influential person in your life.
You.
Yes.
Yeah. That's brilliant, and obviously we can talk a lot more about that, but I'll just put the details of the website connection and all that on the notes, because I know that we're running out of time, and I'm about to have
an influx of people. I can feel the energy actually, which is fine, and I get why it's coming, but I can feel it.
Oh, I wish we had hours and hours and hours, but we don't. And you've come down from Sydney to record this.
Got the rest of our lives, Lisa.
Yes. Oh. So the other thing that you do, which which maybe I will give a snapshot of, and then you can fill in the blanks where I've missed out, is your Lloyd Criminal Consulting. And from what we spoke about off air, that was about you helping people have that space between the corporates and the people that are coming out of the criminal justice system to really help them integrate into getting a job from both angles, like really, I suppose, giving insights into both audiences of how they can make the process and everything benefit and be a successful process.
Yeah. So the model is I would go in and visit in prison, connect with as much as possible in there for 3 or 4 months before release, identify skills, needs, if ready. And this isn't about just getting a guy and going, hey, there's a job over here. It's about, then going and, into community. And, okay, what are the needs that your organisation has?
Yeah.
Are there any high turnover roles? Okay. Yeah. How many guys did you turn over last year in that role? Okay, 5. Wow, and what was the cost? 60 grand. Okay, if I could save you 60 grand, would you be interested? Yes. Okay. Well, what I suggest is let's have a conversation about how realistic you are around understanding the value of a long-term employee, and it might take a little bit more effort, but if you give this guy an opportunity, there's studies and evidence and all that sort of stuff backing it up that you will get a long-term loyal employee given opportunity that can progress all the way up the scale. All these guys are entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
like they are.
They're risk takers. They made a massive risk in order to get into
they are.
It's
uncanny. So they're all people. They're resilient. They're resourceful, and they're entrepreneurs. They're people that you want to have in a business and to grow and develop in a role. And that would be part of what I did.
Brilliant.
Is help facilitate the growth of that person into an organisation to become a key person. And whatever it is, if it's a large organisation, get them out, just get them working so they're doing something. And I don't think this isn't about the job's going to fix this guy and blah, blah, blah. This is about giving him a bit of a purpose and hope, because these guys need hope. That's one thing that's void in prison, is hope. So that's the illusion about getting out of prison. Often the day that you are released is the worst day because you're getting released back into the shitstorm that you just, and you don't know what you're going back to, and it's just all. So it's like an opposite world. So everything you need to do to survive in prison is the opposite of what you need to do outside of prison.
Yeah.
So that's why it's such a bizarre world, It's like if someone confronts you in prison, what you do is you fight, you shake hands, you get up, and you're friends.
Yeah.
So if you're only given a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So if you're only given one solution to everything, that's why you're going. So talking to the employers, don't confront this guy on the job site. If there's an issue, call me up. I'll come in. We'll sit down. We'll have a meeting.
Brilliant.
Just those sorts
Such
of
a great
insights.
So good. This integration process that you think should happen anyway, and these are the solutions. These are the solutions that we're missing that we talked about earlier in the conversation, and it's such a good space, and you are such a, it's so good. I mean, for you even, it's like filling a role of your purpose for you, it really comes back to, you say that nothing that you did or any choices that you made, not that they were great or that they weren't difficult or that you're proud of them, but you wouldn't change them and they aren't regrets because they have led you to be able to sort of have this real purpose now. And obviously it'd be great to get to a real purpose without having to go through that. But you did go through that. You did make those choices, and to come up with the term that you used earlier when we were off air, and that was creative adjustment. So, really looking at how do you cope with the circumstances at hand, and you've done that so well, obviously with a lot of support, but you're in a position where you've, for whatever multiple reasons, have got to the stage where you just want to give and you can see beyond, I suppose, so much of the potential and the possibilities and the opportunities that are out there for people on both sides of the equation.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I'll put the details, obviously, of your work on the show notes, but, and I'm not sure that the audiences necessarily have criminals as people too, but they might have businesses. That's exactly right.
Have valuable employees, and that's the thing, and that was one of the things that was spoken about at the conference I was at today. The illusion that more prisons are safer, provide a safer community. It's not true. A safer community is less prisons, because the more prisons there are, the more criminals there are.
Yeah.
And this is in the States. They're talking about this in the States already. So around, there's evidence, and they've already done studies on it, how it's incorrect. So tough on crime and those, it's just crime. Crime isn't fighting anybody. That war on drugs. Drugs aren't fighting. Then you'll never win a war on drugs just in the supply and demand chain alone. And you can look to Portugal and what they've done in those spaces around decriminalising everything. Because that's what's happened here, and that's what's happened in a lot of the other parts of the world, is and how I felt about being, my substance abuse issue was criminalised. That's what landed me in prison. and that's what's got me to this point. And that, not that I'm laying blame or anything like that, but it could have been solved in another way, which would have been less detrimental to all involved, I think, anyway.
Which is a whole big issue in itself, because it's such a controversial issue, isn't it? And there's going to be people who totally believe and justify all the good reasons to criminalise it and all the reasons to decriminalise it, and it's
there's no evidence to suggest, like, all the evidence, like at the conference that I was just at, all the evidence suggests that the model that we currently sit in with the prison and the punitive environment, it's not working. All it does is drive more prisons and prison industry. And so America got to the tipping point where 1 in 5 people have been in prison. So backtracking, Trump's talking about all these jobs coming back to America and making America great again. They're not going to have a workforce to do it because they're all felons, and you can't work if you're a felon. So that's why he's looking at, sidling up to Kim Kardashian and all those types for prison reform, because he needs to give these guys a second chance because they haven't got a workforce.
Gosh.
So you can be a janitor in the States.
Oh, my God. Well, there's just so much, there's so many stories, so much that I'd love, like just even exploring the benefit of these, the reflection that you've had, the time of reflection and how that impacted you, and the real debriefing and understanding and the needs assessments that you're doing at the moment for both parties. It's all just, I love it. It's brilliant, and it excites me, and I just think, good on you. You so could have gone again in a sliding door situation afterward, but you've gone the path that's really back to community service and really trying to make a difference. So, well done.
Trust me, I've thought about jumping back into real estate a couple of times. I'm a licensed real estate agent, so because it pays well.
Yeah, well, entrepreneurism is certainly not the easy part. That's not for the faint-hearted. Yeah, so unfortunately we've got to wind up, but thank you, Dean, for sharing your story and all your wisdom with us, all your experiences, not all of your experiences, but, a lot of them, and maybe down the track we can record another episode. But I'd love to know, for anyone who's listened to this episode, what your biggest insight is or takeaway from today's conversation. Please leave us a comment and let us know. And if you want more information on Dean, just on both Encapsulator and on his consulting services, I'll leave all of those in the show notes. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Consider subscribing to the Wealthy Living podcast on iTunes and Wealthy Living YouTube channel so that you can listen to more conversations with wonderful humans whose stories, knowledge, and actionable ideas and wisdom can help you live a meaningful, connected, and well life, both personally and professionally. I'm Lisa, an integrated life, clarity, and wellbeing coach, a workplace wellbeing consultant, a conversation facilitator, and an event creator and host. To find out more about my services, you can visit my website at wealthyliving.com.au. That's WELLTHY living.com.au, or connect with me on all of my social media channels. Until next time, remember, connection is medicine.